The fighter called the face of women's MMA didn't want that title. She walked away at her peak. But a decade later, she came back for one more fight. What made her leave, and what pulled her back in? Gina Carano's journey from MMA pioneer to Hollywood actress and back is a story of identity, pressure, and reinvention. She was the first woman to headline a major MMA event, alongside Cris Cyborg in 2009, yet she rejected the label of being the face of the sport. This video explores her rise, her retreat, and her surprising return in 2026 to face Ronda Rousey, using her career milestones and the context of women's MMA evolution to understand what drives an athlete to walk away and then return. In 2009, two women stood in the center of a Strikeforce cage. One was Gina Carano, the other Cris Cyborg. This was the first time women had ever headlined a major MMA event. The weight of the moment was immense, but Carano had been carrying that weight for years. Carano was called the face of women's MMA. She rejected that phrase. For her, it implied a burden she didn't want. She preferred to just fight, not represent a movement. But her popularity made her unavoidable. Her 7-2 record in Elite Extreme Combat and Strikeforce from 2006 to 2009 had drawn crowds and media attention that no other female fighter had generated. Her journey began in the early days of women's MMA, a time when the sport was struggling for legitimacy. She wasn't just fighting opponents, she was fighting stereotypes. Every bout was a proof of concept that women could compete at the highest level. Her technical striking and humble demeanor made her a fan favorite. The fight against Cyborg was a turning point. It was the first time women headlined a major event, but it was also Carano's first professional loss. She retired afterward, leaving the sport at just 27 years old. Why retire after one loss? The pressure of being the face of a movement, combined with the physical toll of training and the lack of a strong support system in women's MMA at the time, likely contributed. Carano had already achieved what few thought possible. She had proven women could draw crowds and headlines. But the sport was still young, and the demands were immense. She stepped away to preserve her health and sanity. In interviews, she later mentioned that she had never loved the fame, only the competition. She shifted to acting, appearing in films like Haywire and The Mandalorian. For a decade, MMA was behind her. But the sport evolved. Women's MMA grew, new stars emerged like Ronda Rousey, and the infrastructure improved. Carano watched from the sidelines, but she was never truly gone from the conversation. Then, in 2026, she announced her return. She would fight Ronda Rousey. This wasn't a nostalgic cash grab. It was a chance to redefine her legacy on her own terms. By 2026, women's MMA had evolved significantly. Better training, bigger promotions, and wider acceptance. Carano could return to a sport that was now mainstream. What does a return mean after 17 years? For Carano, it was about closure. She had left after her only loss. Now, she had the opportunity to write a different final chapter. The fight was not about rankings. It was about two pioneers of women's MMA meeting at the end of their arcs. Rousey had also experienced a meteoric rise and a sudden fall. Both understood the weight of being a trailblazer. Carano knew she might not win, but she had already won by choosing her own path. She had rejected the title Face of Women's MMA not because she was ungrateful, but because she understood that identity should be chosen, not imposed. Her return was the ultimate assertion of that principle. The fight with Cyborg in 2009 was a historic milestone. But Carano's legacy is not just that fight or her record. It's the fact that she opened doors for others. After her retirement, women's MMA grew exponentially. Promotions like Invicta and the UFC's women's divisions owe their existence to the foundation she helped build. Her return against Rousey was a symbolic closing of the loop. She didn't need to win. She needed to finish on her terms. And by stepping back into the cage, she demonstrated that the most important fight is the one you choose for yourself. The lesson from Gina Carano's career is that success isn't measured by titles or records alone. It's measured by the courage to walk away from pressure and the wisdom to return when the time is right. She redefined what it means to be a pioneer, not just being first, but being true to yourself. Gina Carano's story is a reminder that athletes are not defined by their wins or losses alone. She was the first to headline a major MMA event alongside Cris Cyborg, yet she walked away after her first defeat. She rejected the tag "face of women's MMA" because she understood that identity should be chosen, not imposed. Her return in 2026 against Ronda Rousey was not about redemption in the conventional sense. It was about authoring her own narrative. The lesson for us is that we can step away from pressure, redefine our purpose, and return when it feels right for us, not for the audience. Carano teaches that the most important fight is the one you choose for yourself. Her career also highlights the evolution of women's MMA, from its early struggles to mainstream acceptance, and how one person's choices can shape a sport's history. By retiring at 27, she preserved her health and sanity, and by returning at 44, she showed that it's never too late to reclaim your story. What would you do if you were called the face of something you didn't choose? Gina Carano shows us there is power in saying no. If you want more stories about athletes who forged their own paths, subscribe and click the bell. See you in the next one.